Good morning, and thank you for joining the fourth Black Appalachian Coalition listening session. We'll be hearing from people in Ohio today. My name is Bishop Marcia Dinkins. I am the founder of Black Women Rising and the lead for the Black Appalachian, I'm tongue-tied today, Coalition, which launched June 18th of 2021. BLAC was launched to address Black erasure, degenerative policymaking, and the need for the lived experiences and stories of Black people to be a catalyst, not just for infrastructure, but human infrastructure, such as healthcare, affordability with prescription costs, childcare, good paying jobs, investment into Black-owned businesses, true workforce development, entrepreneurship, and so much more. These listening sessions are being held to bring forth the lived experiences and stories of Black people, Black voices in Appalachia that are often overlooked, exploited, extracted, and excluded from the decision-making table and catch the brunt of degenerative policymaking, largely due to the public narrative that romanticizes rural and Appalachian regions as a monolithic white space. BLAC believes that in order to fix the problems of today, we not only have to be those voices of today, but for tomorrow and years to come. We will look at what types of investments are needed to improve the quality of life, health, and economy for Black people. We will identify ways we can work together to ensure federal funds or federal investment reach the communities who carry the burden of divestment. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. Joining us today for our panel is Pastor Orneil Heller. Pastor Heller is a former fire chief. He resides in Warren, Ohio. He has been a strong voice against injustices in Warren, Ohio, while bringing in a faith-based response to climate, healthcare, and other social and environmental ills that continue to plague Black communities and communities of color. Also joining us, but having technical difficulties, will be Corinne Williams. Ms. Williams works with the Community for Concerned Citizens in Warren, Ohio. This group is composed of seniors who fight for climate change and healthcare and so much more. Ms. Williams has been a pillar in her community, and she continues to seek solutions to improve the quality of life for directly impacted people. Welcome, Pastor Heller, and thank you for being a part of this important conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I understand. Oh, here's Corrine. She's finally in. Corrine, I'd like to also thank you for joining the conversation today. I'm so excited to have you both. I know you both, and I've lived in Warren, so this is just a treat for me today. And what we're doing today is really just hearing about, Warren, Ohio, the people of Warren, Ohio, your lived experiences and your stories, whether you're directly impacted by it or people who have been impacted by it. And so, Pastor Heller, I understand that you are a part of the community of concerned citizens, but also you have been a voice, in Warren, Ohio. You have fought against so many things, and I've watched you be powerfully in action. So can you tell us about what you do, what your work was like as a fire chief, and, what are you doing with the community of concerned citizens and other ways that you fight for justice in your community?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, let me say, as Bishop Dinkins said, I was a firefighter for 29 years. I retired as an assistant fire chief. I've been in the city of Warren for most of my life. And I'm also a part of the clergy. I'm a pastor here in Warren. So I wasn't born here, but I was raised here. And it's just like, I've been here long enough to see how things have evolved and how things have changed, some for the better and some for the not so good. And if I could just give a quick history about Warren, it started off like an industrial city, to where we had all the factories, the steel mills, the aluminum factories, the Packard Electric. It was flooded with factories. So a lot of people came here for job opportunities. And I was looking over some statistics. So at our highest level, so we're a small community, but we were flourishing at one time. At our highest level, we reached a population of 63,000, and that was in the 1970s. And once the steel industry took a downward turn, the population has been steadily declining. And the progress that African Americans and others had made in the city of Warren and its neighboring communities, that progress seems to have evaporated now, because Warren as a whole doesn't have very many opportunities. I could see light at the end of the tunnel, but things have changed. I might be all over the place, but as things come to my heart and mind, I just want to be able to share them. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to them. But I remember growing up and having grocery stores, on little small stores, like 3 or 4 stores in the neighborhood, right in the immediate neighborhood, where you could go buy eggs and milks. I remember having gardens just decorate our community. We had gardens, our neighbors had gardens. You can get the fresh fruit, the fresh vegetables. We had fruit trees. Neighbors got along with one another. But now when I look, I see none of that. You have to drive across town just to get fruits and vegetables. Gas stations, I lived right next door to a gas station. You have to drive across town to get gas. And so it's like you can't hardly find jobs. There was a time where you could graduate high school and have a job the very next day. You can't do that anymore. Now you have to have all the credentials that make you qualified to get jobs. Before you can get a job with a simple high school education. And a lot of times you didn't even have to have that. And even within the schools, we had vocational classes. We had so many opportunities here in this city. But once the steel mill died, so did those opportunities. And now General Motors have moved out of it wasn't in Warren itself, but it was in a neighboring city called Lordstown. And now they're gone. But the city of Warren in the Trumbull County and the Mahoning Valley, they're now looking at clean energy. And that's what CCC is trying to help out with. Even before we got to the point to where we were trying to educate people to clean energy and renewable energy, CCC has been in the community helping underserved people, because we are stationed at a park. We are the shepherds of a park called Quimby Park. It was neglected. So some grassroots people in our community decided that this is the only park on our side of town, the southwest side of town, the side of town that gets neglected. When they built a high school on the southwest side of town, they built it on swamp ground, and now that high school no longer stands. And that's typical. If you go back and look just at Black communities across the nation, you'll find out a lot of times when they gave us an area to call our own, they put us in flood zones and things of that sort. But anyways, people have come together, and people are trying to make sure that this underserved part of our community is getting equity, not just equality, but equity. So we have a community garden. We have events at the park. We shepherd the park, keep it clean and things of that sort. And we just try to help out any way that we can. And Sister Corrine could probably talk more about that. I've been rambling for a while.
No, you've done great, and we appreciate it. And thank you for the historical context, about Warren. So Corinne, please, by all means, we've introduced you and let the listeners know that you too work with Pastor Heller with regards to the community of concerned citizens. So if you'd like to, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing also with Quimby Park, or, and what you'd like to see happen from there.
I'm a jack of all trades. I guess I've had some jobs doing. I've worked in daycare. I've had my own child care business for years. I was assistant manager at the Food Stamp Issuing Center when they used to issue the books of food stamps. I've done some everything, I guess. But I always had a compassion, a heart to help. And then I got involved with CCC, and they was doing all kinds of community stuff, and it's like, wow, and Quimby Park is where we used to meet. Well, we still do have our meetings, and it was going down. Nobody used Quimby Park, but as kids, we all grew up. That was like a big, something at Quimby. They had ice skating. It's a great big hill that we had sleigh ride down with the sleds, a pond, and it was just all just there. No one used it except us, basically. And So we said, we start pushing for them to try to save it because the roof went bad on it and everything. And we kept on and they put the roof on. Then they just stopped. Then we got a couple people in that start helping us fight, and they start renovating. Then they start seeing how many people was excited to, see Quimby being, redone. It was like, okay, so now they're doing a lot to Quimby. They're supposed to, keep on improving it, but they refuse to put restrooms on the outside. Now, when the park has swings and the playground equipment, they have picnic tables. We have a pond where we keep fish, so they go fishing, but there's no restroom if the the house is not open. Well, 75% of the time, the shelter house is not open because it's only open if, someone rented out or we're having something, but we're not there every day. And our fight now is to try to get them to see that it's not like the other parks where you're riding a bike through and stopping. This is a family, but the families come, they picnic, and there's no stores even close to go to a restroom. So that's one of our biggest fights right now, is to try to get them to see that we need restroom for people to enjoy the park. Right in the neighborhood, right in the smack of a neighborhood, and that's unusual. And it's old, it's almost 100 years old, so it's historic. But they're doing a beautiful job on, getting it together, but it needs to be complete. And so that is one of our fights with them now, trying to get that together. We do Juneteenth every year. We're the only one in Warren that does Juneteenth. We do it every year, and it's getting bigger and bigger because we want people to know the history. These young people don't know anything about our history. And we really want them to at least come and see and have some of the old things, how we might have been, but now things has advanced, and look at where you are now. We also do cleanup. We cleaned up, we went on Main Street and cleaned the bridge this past Saturday with a project with another group that we cleaned the bridge, all that stuff off the bridge and stuff. We do cleanup twice a year, at least. We have different fundraisers and stuff to keep things going. We serve food free sometimes, to the community. And we're trying to improve more and more. We were doing better until that COVID came on and it set things back. So, but we have a lot of ideas, and our biggest thing now is getting some young people. We are all senior citizens almost. It's probably 3 people that's not. So we definitely is seeking new members. So these young people, while we still got this going, they can come in, and I know it's gonna be hard, but they need to take over kinda. Don't forget about us, but get things moving into now, while we still have this community group going. So that's what we're seeking right now, is to get restrooms, and to get young people in, get involved. It's so, it's just remarkable how the minds of these young people, but getting them into action and working together we got to work on that.
Thank you for that. That sounds like some really exciting work. And one of the things that we often miss, especially as you pointed out, Corinne, in the communities of color or the Black communities, we can have parks, or you can have some access, but not full access. And then, as Pastor Heller was saying, and there's no stores, there's really no access to meet the other needs that you have. So it's a beautiful thing to have the park, but it's how many people will come, and as you said, it's just a constant fight. And then realizing that in the communities, this is one way that we get to have something for the children to do, and it's a place where, like you said, families can come. And with that being, and then getting the young people involved and knowing their history. And so part of this conversation is, we have to maintain the history of Black people. What we see going on these days is so many attacks through so many things, and how things are being really structured these days. I was looking at the news last night and really frustrated on how a judge was really talking about how certain people who were protesting in social justice, for George Floyd, and when the young white teenager killed those other ones, that they couldn't be called victims. They had to be rioters or looters. And so when you think about just the terminology, and this is to you, Pastor Helen, when we think about the terminology of how this occurs, even though these individuals are white individuals, Black children and Black youth or Black people will have to carry, the brunt of that. And so what is it like? You mentioned the population decline. You mentioned the fact of youth not, or just no jobs there. So what is it like as far as being able to keep the legacy alive in Warren, Ohio, when it's absent of so many opportunities?
It's very difficult. It's difficult, number one, because people want jobs and the jobs just aren't here right now. So when you have what we would label success stories, when they reach that level, they're out of here. When they go off to school and get educated, they don't tend to come back because there aren't those opportunities here. I was reading, Warren had this with the comprehensive strategic plan that I've been reading through. In every category, Warren and Trumbull County is on the decline. And just off the top of my head, some of the things I remember reading is that we really don't build new houses even. We don't build new factories, new buildings, new houses. The majority of our houses were built like in 1959 or somewhere around there. It's when most of the time when people build new houses, it's in the surrounding areas in Howland or Cortland. It's not in Warren. And that frustrates me because Warren is still just like any major city in Ohio. In the morning, when it's time to go to work, you see all the cars coming into Warren. After work is over, you see all the cars going out of Warren. And when I worked at the fire department, I used to argue with those guys because they fought and fought and fought because they wanted to have the right to. We had a residency law and they fought until they got that residency law overturned because they felt like the city had no right to force them to live within the boundaries of the city. And I would always argue with them and say, the city isn't forcing you to live here. The city is just saying, if you want to work for us, come on and be a part of our community. If you don't want to be a part of our community, go somewhere else and work. And that would frustrate them. And I would say, so we're not forcing you to come here and live. As a matter of fact, if your community is so much better than Warren, work in your community. Why do you come here and work and then take your tax dollars and your spending money and go spend it somewhere else? We will work in our community. You go work where you live and we will be fine. And they would get irritated with me. Let me go a little bit further. Then they would excuse me, I get loud and passionate sometimes. Then they would turn around and start talking about all these illegal aliens coming into the United States of America, taking our jobs. They need to stay where they're at and get jobs. I'm saying, hold on, isn't that hypocritical? Are you an illegal alien when you come in? But it's just like, I want people to come into this city with the idea of, I want to contribute to what's here. There are opportunities here. And believe it or not, Warren, you can get signals when a community is getting ready to build back up. They're starting to invest in the downtown areas and in the couple of blocks around the downtown area. So some things are getting ready to start back up around here, but you don't see people, I just say it, you don't see African American, you don't see Black indigenous people being a part of the investment team, being a part of the planning team. And we need to realize that that's the only way that we're going to move up, is if we get involved from the ground up. But we wait until things are already rolling and then we want to jump on. But I think we got to be more progressive. Warren is going to be built back up again. We need to be a part of that building process. We need to do it by getting involved in politics, knowing who to vote for, who is supporting our interests. And so often we think that voting is the most important thing. Voting is very, 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 very important. But by the time we go to vote, you're basically telling me who my choices are. No, get involved in the process early enough so that you can tell the people that I don't want to vote for you because I believe what you stand for. I want you to come and hear what my interests are, and then you decide if you can support my interests. But we don't get involved in all that. And I think part of the reason is because we no longer teach civics in school, so we don't realize the power that we have. I could go on and on about politics. You said something that made me want to get into racism. If you want to talk on that subject matter, just let me know when you're ready to start, because that's where my passion is. And I used to think, and I'm sorry if I ramble, just put up a finger when you're ready for me to shut down. But I used to think that because I'm serious, for the longest, I went through life just casually, just happy. It is what it is. And then I start finding out, hold on, there's some people that got some opportunities that I never knew that they had. And I don't have those things. I was in my 40s, I believe, when I start realizing that this thing called racism is real and it's deeper than what even I realized. And so I started reading up on history and reading up on laws and reading up on cultures. And it's like, this thing is systematic. And then, so in my mind, when I heard the truth, now I feel educated. Now I can make better decisions. So I naively believe that if I educate some other people, they will be exposed to the truth and then they'll walk in that truth. I found out it's much more difficult than that. Not only do they already know the truth, they already have a plan how to suppress my truth. When they talk about that critical race theory thing and how we can't bring that into our schools because it's going to make our children hate America. When you was lying on our people, it made people hate us. You didn't see anything wrong with that. And now, before we can even start teaching it, before we can start telling the truth, you already want to cut us off at the ankles. But we're not lying. We're trying to bring out the truth. We're trying to bring out the facts. And then, I don't want to mention the man's name, but when him and his crew got in Washington, I learned something else. There's something called, I thought all we needed was the facts, and then we could make good, sound decisions. Then I found out there is something known as alternative facts. I had never heard of alternative facts until 2016. And I'm like, wow. But I'm starting to realize people don't care about the truth. They care about their interests. And it's discouraging, but I'm not giving up. I advocate for the underdog in whatever situation. I believe we have to change what people think and believe. I think we have to change our culture, and I think we have to change some legislations and some legislatures, because if you could change people's way of thinking, but there's certain laws that are still on the books, we ain't gonna make as much progress as we need to make. I was telling some of your background folk when we came on early that I was just rushing from another event to get to this one. And on my way home, I was listening to a program, and they were talking about gerrymandering and how that affects, and how you have Black folk that are like 80% of a community, but yet it's cut up in such a way that their 80% means nothing. They can't win any elections. They can't get their interests supported by the politicians because of this thing called gerrymandering. So we have to change legislation, and we have to change legislatures. But before we do that, we got to change the mindset of our people to let them know there is power in voting. There is power in getting involved. You need to decide who the dog catcher is, who the mayor is, who the city council people. And most of us, if we do care, it's only about the president of the United States. But it gets much deeper than that. I'm sorry for rambling once again.
No, thank you for that. And we definitely will build up on that in our next question. So Corinne, one of the things that Pastor Heller mentioned And I know when I was living in Warren, this was really a big conversation about housing, and especially housing for our seniors. And so, my question is, what are some of the things that, seniors are experiencing? I know you and I had to talk about like Medicare and the fact that, it's not always the prescription drugs, but it could be, the cost. So can you just share with us, like, how has all of these things, impacted the seniors in Warren? And I'm not asking you to speak for every senior. I can ask you to speak from your experience and maybe those that you've been in conversation with. I don't want to marginalize
One thing I found out that a lot of people don't know, that with medical insurance stuff, if you don't carry it and go get insurance and something happened and you need it, they penalize you and you pay more money for it then, because you have to have insurance. A lot of people do not get that, because it's like they can't afford it. But if something happens, you might have to go get it, and then you're penalized because you're not carrying it. To me, and this is just my opinion, I know a lot of people who had problems in the past don't agree with that. But when it came up to this Obama insurance, where you have to have it, it made things worse for a lot of low income people, because, well, yeah, I'll just say just above low income, because if you make a certain amount of money, but right there where you're not low, but you're not middle, that's a tough spot to be in, because before they had clinics that you can go once a week or something, no matter what problem you had, you can go, you're eligible to go, especially if you didn't have any insurance. Now, you gotta have insurance to go everywhere. You have to pay. Now, Social Security, once you hit 65, they take out, I think 144 or something like that. Everybody's check that's on Social Security. If you make a little, if you make a lot, they take, that's for Social Security, that's your medical. But when you go to the doctor, a lot of times you have a copay. If you get any kind of test, you got nothing that's covered. You always got something. They're sending you a bill from here. They're sending you a bill from X-ray. They're sending you a bill from something else. So you got medical bill. And if you're dealing with a problem, you got to go back again, and all this just keep adding up. So you're barely making it now. Now you got medical bill. So when you can't pay all of them, you miss, then it hits your credit. So now you got a credit problem. You can't go get this. You can't, because of medical bills. There was a lot of times, it didn't go against your score that much. Now, it just looks like everything is stacking up against people, no matter what. But as far as housing, I see a lot of the housing situation where it's not, a lot of it's not just for seniors, it's for seniors and disabled. So that means you got a lot of age factors mixed in with the seniors because you're disabled. And they need senior homes, just for older people that, have come of age. But I really don't know a whole lot about the senior homes and stuff too much, as far as except for things like that. But I hear different things is how they kept up, and the government does not check on things. They just let things go down. Things, this don't work, that don't work. They're not on their job. And I even disagree with how they're building some of them where they don't have a back door. They say if you have a window, you can get out the window. And that's just going on. And I guess that's just a new style, but we used to have a back door and a front door. Now, nope, you don't have to have that anymore. So if you got something sitting in front of your window, you got to move that out the way if something happens. But I really can't speak a lot on the senior homes, because thank God that I'm not in one yet, but
No, but you make a good point. You have to have a ingress and an egress, emergency ways out. And the thing about it, I know a lot of people have different opinions about the ACA, but what I can say, just from being in the work is that, the ACA did allow so many people to have, health insurance that were not insured and uninsurable. And the, you know, the blessing of that was that they could not discriminate against you if you had pre-existing conditions. And just for clarity, I want to make sure that, you know, for a lot of the people, you know, in the, you know, when Ms. Williams is speaking to the co-pays, it's Medicare. She shared with me that when you are, if you don't get insurance or Medicare when you're 65, for every year that you don't have insurance and you finally get insurance, what they do is they come back. And the penalty is you pay for the insurance that you finally signed up for, but they make it retroactive as far as the penalties. And so you have to pay that as well, which makes it difficult, as Ms. Williams was saying, you know, for seniors to pay, or people who have fixed incomes, and to have all of these medical bills that, you know, that you have to add to. That's just another bill that I always say to people, if I didn't budget for it, then it's a problem. And so we're not budgeting for these types of things. And our senior citizens definitely can't do that if they're already on a fixed income. So thank you for sharing that, because those are vital points that a lot of people don't know that has to be done. Pastor Heller, I know that you and I had did some works when I was living in Warren around healthcare, and you were a powerful voice around that. Could you speak to, you know, healthcare as well?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that me having a job at the Warren Fire Department, which working for the city is a government job, we had fringe benefits. And so when I got sick, when I got an ingrown toenail, and I'm being facetious there, but when something went wrong, I could go straight to the hospital. But then I start thinking of all those times, man, I'm starting to feel some kind of way that there were things wrong with my father, or there were things wrong with my mother when I was growing up, and they just endured because they did not have health care. And how many other people were just enduring the pain, the back pain, but I still got to go out here and put those 8 hours in. And I'm being kind, because today is you don't know if you're going to work 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, is whatever the man tells you you're going to work. But I just remember my parents enduring and going out and doing what they had to do. To this day, my father has different things wrong with his body that if he would have had the insurance that I had, there's no telling what type of shape that he would be in. And so we need health insurance. And I mean, I don't think anything that the government does for us is perfect, but I think for the most part, from my understanding, my personal understanding, I think that the American, what you call it, Care Act, what's the proper name?
Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helped more. I think, I don't know the statistics, but I think it helped more people than it hurt, because once the opioid pandemic hit, you start seeing the same people who were complaining about it now saying, you better leave and they like to call it Obamacare. I don't like to call it that. You better leave my Obamacare alone. And really, they didn't even know Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act were the exact same thing. They just heard that one. And that's one thing about one side of the aisle. They can label things so well and promote their negative concepts and get people to buy into them. But I think the Democrats, we got to do a better job. Whether you're Democrat or right, the progressives, the moderates, the people who care about other folk, we got to do a better have a better way of packaging our ideas and putting them out there so people that know this is what's really going on. You've been falling for those alternative facts. These are the real facts. But then real quick, I want to say that over the last couple of months, when it comes to seniors in healthcare, it's had a personal impact on me, because I had an aunt who went through some healthcare issues, and I got involved to try to help her. And I didn't realize all the red tape that you have to go through just to get certain things. And then now my mother-in-law, she has health issues, and we've taken her into our home, my wife and I, and just the stress that is on the not just the person who needs the care, but now the person who is providing the care, the stress that it puts on people. I was naive to all that. Now I bow. I applaud those caregivers out there that take care of the seniors who really need it. Then my pastor and his wife took a turn for the worse health-wise. And because I'm retired and wasn't tied down, and because financially for this area, this demographic area that I'm living in, I'm all right. If I was to move to a big city like Dayton, I wouldn't be all right. But anyways, I was able to, I had the time and the resources that I could drive him back and forth to Cleveland or Warren or Streetsboro to his doctor's appointments so that he was able to get the proper care. But then I just start thinking about all the people that don't have someone to help them. And in my heart, it's like, as a community, and I was even going to bring it to CCC, Corinne, as a community. Now, a year ago, I wouldn't have brought it because I hadn't been impacted personally by it. But now that I have been exposed to some of the things that's going on and how difficult it can be, it's like we have to do better by our senior citizens. And one day, God willing, I will be a senior citizen and I might need somebody to help me. So I want to do better by our senior citizens.
Thank you for that. And that's, one of the things that we see in a lot of the, Black families is because of the, as you mentioned, Pastor Heller, the lack of health care or the lack of access to other services, or just not having the income, that we find ourselves having to be caregivers for our parents. And that becomes difficult, for both parts of the family. One, because when you are seasoned, they don't want you to tell them anything because they feel like they've earned all of the points in the world, and you can't tell me anything. But it just speaks to the fact of how Black people have to take on the burden and the brunt of so many different things. And you're right when you say, and it makes it difficult to have these conversations sometimes because people are still not realizing that the ACA and also known as Obamacare are the same. And so when they hear the conversation, they don't see themselves as being impacted by it or insurance being lost or attacked because of the fact that they believe, Obamacare is not the Affordable Care Act. And so, you're right. We have to do a much better job of speaking about these things because the connections aren't being made. And because connections aren't being made, then people would feel like, what am I fighting for? Because that doesn't pertain to me. You mentioned, and then to think about with our senior citizens, the one thing that I often think about is the fact of how many times we overlook the need of the human infrastructure. And the human infrastructure is the things that like you've done, Corinne. You've been in daycare. You said that you dispensed, food stamps when we, used to use the books of food stamps before we got the, what is it called? The card. I can't remember.
EBT or something like that.
EBT card. Yeah, there. And so, and Pastor Heller, firefighting, all of these things are human. It's a part of our human infrastructure, what we need. We can have the roads and the bridges and all of that. But if we don't have, like you said, caregivers, that's part of human infrastructure. Daycares, part of human infrastructure. What are some of the ways that we can begin to improve these things as far as being able to help ourselves? Because I'm quite sure that we each know someone who is struggling. And the only way that they can have an improved quality of life is if specific services were put into place. And so going back to what you said, and I just like for you, you both to entertain me for a minute, just act as though we have the president in front of us, or we have some state legislators, or, we have decision makers in front of us, and they want to hear what you have to say. And so, what is it going to take to help families, Black families in Warren to improve their quality of life from the human infrastructure standpoint? Is it more dollars in childcare, Corrine? Is it, is it looking at, caregiving and making sure that there's dollars there? I'm just what he needs to hear. Black voices need to be heard. And if you had an opportunity, and I'll start with you, Corinne, you want to take a minute or so, you had that opportunity, what would you say? Speaking from where you are in your own personal experience, what you have done and what you see, the different fields looking like now, what would you say? We have the audience of the decision maker, the ears of the decision makers.
Well, what I've experienced with friends and family is there was a time they tried to keep you out the hospitals and different nursing homes and stuff, but now when something goes wrong, that's where they put you at. Instead of paying someone, it's hard to get qualified to get a caretaker at home. I don't understand what happened to that. You'd rather have them where you have to take care of all their needs instead of them being allowed to stay in their home and just have a caretaker come so many hours a day. And I'm finding that far and in between, more and more people can't get this service. I mean, it's like, wow, no matter what, they're not eligible for that service. And it's got to be less expensive than just you to be taken care all the way. That's a point that really needs to be brought out, because I don't understand that.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Help the family to help the family, right, versus spending all of these dollars in a nursing home where the family is taking on an extra burden because somebody has to be there, even for have to be there because of the safety, the safety concerns that you have. And so you're right, we need more investment, into, caregivers, and I agree. Pastor Heller, what say ye?
What say ye? I would say, Mr. President, and then I would be proud to say, Madam Vice President, Speaker of the House, Senate Majority Leader, listen, y'all need to get something straight. Y'all work for us. Your job is not to get reelected. Technically, your job is to serve the interests of your constituents, and you aren't doing that. There are bills, there's legislations before you right now that would help families to do better, but y'all can't come together and pass a law. There are people working too many hours. When you talk about the human infrastructure, it's hard for me to do anything for my family when I, as a mother or a father, have to work one job, go home, change into a different uniform, and go right back to another job. That don't make sense. We don't have to work people to the grave. Let's do something let's increase the minimum wage. And really $15 an hour isn't a sustainable income to provide what you need as a family. You make more than $15 an hour. You have good health care. How come your constituents can't make more than $15 an hour? How come your constituents can't have good health care? Come on now, we are all humans. Let's pass some of these bills that sit before you today. You represent the people of the United States of America, not the corporations of the United States of America, not your colleagues sitting beside you. You represent, and then I would talk to the people and say, people, they work for you. If they aren't doing what's best for your interests, we need to come together and devise a way to get them out of office and put somebody in office who will represent your interests. But a lot of times we don't even know our own interests. We're just listening to the politicians chirping in our ears, and we think, ooh, the biggest issue right now is whether or not we allow people of the same sex to get married. That might be an issue, but is that your number one issue? Come on now. You should want a good education, and you don't have to spend the rest of your life trying to repay the loans that you got that you had to take out in order to get that education. We can do this if the politicians would only come together and represent our interests. Quit allowing them to write the narrative for you. Sit down, think about what it really is that what your interests really are. What do you really want for your family? And then let's come together and organize and make sure they understand what our interests are, and then hold them accountable.
Thank you for that, Pastor Heller. You mentioned a lot and you talked about the legislation. And I'd just like to ask you, we're talking about, we've heard about the Build Back Better, and today we know that there was an immediate release for the Build Back Better framework. I don't know if you saw it as of yet. But how do we build back better? For Warren, how do we build back better for Black people? How do we build back better, for people who are, as you said earlier, living in flood zones? How do you build back better? What are the ways that we build back better? Because I'm looking for we need some solutions. Yes, you have this framework, but as you said, factories have closed down. And I know, again, from living there, what the job situation is like, and what people are forced to do. And then because they are forced to survive in ways that are not, they're meaningful for them, but they're not legal, most of the time. And so, but people are doing, and it's not to say, hey, I'm condoning it. It's not for me to condone or not condone. I'm respecting the fact that people are put in situations where they have to live in a particular way. And it's always in the Black communities. What are the ways that we build back better? I know he put in here affordable, high quality childcare, universal pre-K, clean energy, allow, Medicare to have covering, you mentioned housing, education beyond high school, but we don't have the workforce development programs. There are other things that people have gotten. But can you just say a little more? Because you're right, we need to look at this legislation. And then let's not mention, as you were saying earlier about voting, how it's difficult to get, the John Lewis Act passed, or the Voting Rights Act passed, and the attacks on Black people, from so many different levels.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is just another way of erasing the Black voice and the Black identity, and creating and perpetuating Black invisibility.
Yes. Now I learned this from you and others like you. Organizing. And organizing isn't just me coming out. I have some ideas, but organizing isn't me forcing my ideas on others. Organizing is to get out in the community and find out. And that's what CCC tries to do. We don't just say, this is what the Southwest side needs. We get involved with the Southwest side, see some of the things that they might be interested in. I'm tired of people coming into our communities, telling us who our leaders are and what's best for our communities. And since I think negative of those ways, I don't want to do it my own self, but I do believe we need jobs. There's a gentleman by the name of Claude Anderson. He says that when you see an uprising in crime and drugs and all that, it's because people want work. He said crime is typically based upon the employment level of a community. If there is a lot of employment, you'll see the crime go down. If there's not a lot of employment, you'll see the crime go up. The Warren, Ohio is, I would say, saturated with crime and drugs. And we need to change that. But one of the ways to change it is to give people an opportunity to work. They're willing to work because they're out there selling their drugs, all right? But he says that you have three choices. You could either provide me with a job, or give me support, or I'll take it from you. And he said the statistics will show that most people, and I know there's exceptions to every rule, but most people want that own pride and dignity to go out and work for something. I don't want to steal it from you. I don't want you to give it to me. If I had a choice, I would rather go out and earn a living, but the jobs aren't here. And when they are here, and I just heard this the other day, man, I wish I could remember the numbers, and I can't remember the numbers, so I'll just say it in such a way you'll know what I'm talking about. But African American with a bachelor's degree is less likely to get hired than a Caucasian without a GED. I mean, without a high school diploma. It's like the Caucasian person without the high school diploma in this area stands a better chance of getting hired than an African American, well, not just in this area, in the United States of America, stands a better chance of getting hired than a African American with a bachelor's degree. So quit discriminating against me when I do show you that I'm qualified. I have the skill set to work on your job. So we need better jobs. I told you, we haven't built new houses in this area for I don't know how long. I think it was about the 1950s. Come up with a way to start building some new houses. Come up with some recreation. There's a lot we have to do, but I think number one, we need to get into the community to find out what the needs really are. Ask the people, what are they dealing with, instead of just trying to come up with our own conclusions, and then get out. Man, we got all this money being spent across the United States of America. Let's put it to good use. I ain't talking about going out and paying somebody $400,000 to come in with a comprehensive plan that you're going to let sit on a desk for 20 years. I'm talking about getting out and trying to truly serve the people. And it's hard to find people that's willing to do that.
I see you shaking your head in agreement, Corinne. Anything you want to add to what Pastor Heller said? Because I know you have walked, you have pounded the pavement and walked in the shoes of the changes it's gone forward. So anything you want to add or share to that?
That was the icing on the cake for me. That's who I am. People always want to write rules and say this community needs this or this area needs this, but they never go out into the area and get with the people who they need to find out what they feel, what they live. You can hear things, you read things, a few friends, but when do you go out in that community or have something so the community can gather and sit and listen to exactly what their thoughts are? That's what's missing in the world right now. Is everybody know what's best for especially low income. They know what they need. You don't know what they need because you don't go out there and you don't mingle with them. Just like the police, they don't mingle with Black people. They don't know. And that means if you can get just that step done, the west side of Warren, and it has different. They have other people living there, but majority of them, I think, is Black. And just like with police, and they want to put the police on the west side, but it's like that's going to just cause more havoc. There should be ways that I came up with one where, everybody got a cell phone. Take pictures. If your neighbor's selling drugs, there should be a way you can take pictures and put them in a box or somewhere, have some drop-off place where once they have enough evidence, the police start riding by, they do their job, police themselves. They don't need to be police. Teach neighbors, okay, because you may not have 3 of them that won't, but you might got 6 of them that does. We need to police ourselves. We need to find who we are. We so busy being Black and saying Black, but it's no color. And once we take Black out of our spheres, it's just Black, we're like, I'm not Black, I'm just a man. Of course you got color, but we're so embedded with that it's blind enough to moving further. So I'm glad he said that about, get on it, let's go see what they need. I'm always a spokesperson in the middle. Not that my income's in, I'm just saying I listen to what people go through, then I see ones who are doing better, and I try to bridge that gap for them to understand. And I try to tell them all the time, but they don't understand that because they don't live that. So I live all the time making those statements to both, different people. And God has gave me a gift where a lot of times people accept my opinion of, or say, okay, I see that now. So I think that's one of the main things that we need in Warren and United States is go and get with the people who you're trying to pass laws for and to fight for them. They may not even want that fight. That's their area. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And you kind of you just gave me an aha moment that I had never even thought of, Corinne. And you said they want to take Black out of it. They want to take Black out of Black. And so that just really made me think about, and I understand, the fight has always been, historically, to not be seen, but the truth of the matter is we do see color, and because of the color, it erases, it creates and has perpetuated so much divestment from Black communities and communities of color. And people have fought to be seen as the man, or wanting to be seen as the person. But when we begin to stop naming who we are, then we begin to create our own erasure. Because at the end of the day, if I don't tell my story as a Black woman, how do I get to name what I need as a Black woman? So, I mean, and it's like, and I guess, on our last show, someone mentioned in our Kentucky conversation where we were just really talking about Appalachia. And Warren is along the Ohio River Valley. It's considered an Appalachian community. A lot of people don't even know that. But Black people did not want to identify as an Appalachian because of the negative connotation. And I'm wondering if that's the same thing we're kind of experiencing now, or have experienced, because we don't want to create to our own invisibility. And I think, we go into what you were saying, Pastor Heller, around racism. We always want to have an analysis of it. We know what it is. The question is, how do we begin to flip this coin as Black people to just name and claim what we need versus doing what you just mentioned, Corinne, taking Black out of the conversation? Because, if white people are doing it and we're doing it, how do we ever arrive at the point of what Black people need, or Black voices being heard and Black people being at the decision-making table? And I saw your hand up, so I'm going to give it over to you, Pastor Heller.
Oh, great. Thank you. I don't think we need to take Black out of the equation. I think we need to learn how to just deal with everything that God has given us. It irritates me when I hear people say they're colorblind. No, you're not. You see my color when I walk in front of you. We just need to learn how to deal with one another. And as a matter of fact, neither is God colorblind. So let's be like God. Let's just learn how to deal with all of the different colors that God has given us. And I just don't want to put the onus on Caucasians. I think that we as a Black people, we need to recognize who we are and the value that we bring to the table. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with the doll test, the baby doll test, but it shows that at an early age, we are programmed. There's so much propaganda that gets into our psyche that they were having 5-year-old, 6-year-old children look at a Black baby doll and a white baby doll. Which baby doll is pretty? The white baby doll. Which baby doll was smart? The white baby doll. Which baby doll was bad? The Black. It's like at an early age, we're already being programmed to think that white is better than Black. We have to start reprogramming ourselves. I hear our people always talking. You're going to know the analogy when I give it to you, this analogy about crabs in the barrel. And they get mad every time one Black person try to climb up the social ladder, all the other Blacks start pulling them down. We like crabs in a barrel. My issue is, don't get mad at the other crabs. Maybe those crabs aren't grabbing on to try to pull you back down. Maybe they're trying to get out too. Don't get mad at the other crabs for trying to get out the barrel. Get mad at the people who put you in the barrel in the first place. Crabs don't naturally appear in barrels in nature, right? So how did you get in the barrel? Let's deal with those issues. So we look at ourselves negatively. And I use the analogy, we think their ice water is colder than our ice water. No, it isn't. I'm serious when I say this. We will go to a Black institution, they mess up one time, we will start talking about, I ain't never going back there no more. They don't. But we go to another people's institution, they mess up 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, and we keep going back because we've been brainwashed into believing that we we start believing that we are inferior to others. We need to study our history and realize the contributions that we have made to this nation. They have been some great contributions. I'm here to tell you. If you had the time, I'd tell you some stories. But we have made great constitutions. I promise you, some of your ancestors have made great contributions to this nation. Take the time to go find out what they did, and then you'll realize the power that you have within. You can do some of those same great things. So quit believing the hype. We got to come together to, yes, please. I meant to say this and I almost forgot. I am thankful for desegregation, but I think desegregation hurt us to some extent, because when we start talking about the Black community, I don't see much of a Black community, because when we were desegregated, there was what we are familiar with, this thing called white flight. But we neglect to talk about, there was also something called Black flight. There were some African Americans who left our community because they thought they were better than some other African Americans. They wanted to some of them did it because there was opportunities, but some of them did it because they just wanted to get away from the crime. You criminals, I ain't just gonna say the crime, but they looked at our own people as if they were less than, and they had to go to a better area. So it was a lot of us that tried to move to the suburbs. Sometimes we weren't allowed, but we left our own communities, and now we don't have those communities. So I say to ourselves, don't put the onus on white people to come and fix our situations. Don't put the onus on the police department. They're saying, in Warren, they're always talking about, we need the police to patrol our neighborhoods. No, let us patrol our neighborhoods. Go knock on your neighbor's door and introduce yourself to your neighbor. Find out what your neighbor is in need of. Let your neighbor know that your neighbor can trust you. Because right now we don't even know who our neighbors are, what their interests are, and we want the police to come in and do all that. No, once the police come into our neighborhoods, your sons and daughters are going to start getting some tickets. Your sons and daughters are going to get stopped. Your sons and daughters might get stopped for a legitimate reason, and it might turn into Floyd. I can't even think of his name. I'm talking so fast. Tell me the name, Sister Marcia. George Floyd. My goodness. It might turn into a George Floyd situation. How about we get out into our neighborhoods? We get proactive in our own neighborhoods. And if the police need to come, we can call them in. But before we call them in, we need some elders that we can call in. Hey, Neil. Hey, Corrine. We got a situation going on with Jimmy and Johnny, and we need y'all to come in and mediate over this situation. And hopefully they can trust us because they've seen our faces. They know what we stand for. And then we don't have to call the police. But we don't police our own neighborhoods well enough. So why we want other people to do it for us?
That's so true. Anything you want to add, Corinne? I just saw you shaking your head. So is there anything that you wanted to add? Yes, ma'am.
But we're still moving out of the neighborhood too. When you get decent income, what you do? You move out the neighborhood and you don't look back. You say you look back, but in general, you don't look back. So it's still happening.
Those are some powerful statements. And I want to thank you both, because this has been such a rich conversation. And Pastor Heller, I could sit with you, and just hear all of the history and all of the stories, and listen to Corinne talk about how she is, she is the elder of the community, of the village, and the things that she does, and how people do trust, and trust is so viable, and it's so critically important for us to be able to even move. What's that saying, Steve? The book that Stephen Covey has, we move at the speed of trust. And if we could just do that, how much faster would we be, in making some changes in our own communities, while connecting the local and the state fight to the national fight. because we know all of this is trickling down, and what's absent or what's missing as far as those federal solutions, sometimes it's always absent and missing from us. So it is so critical that we continue to push the needle and make sure that we are at the table, that we are advancing the conversation, that we are speaking to the need, that we need affordable health care, that we need our seniors to be able to have an opportunity to have their medical bills paid, that we need lower prescription drug prices, that we need an education for all. You know, I see you nodding your head on the lower prescription drug prices. I'm assuming you have encountered that, Pastor Heller, or your family member.
No, you posed that question to me and I never answered it. Now you're running down the list of things that we need. So thank you for actually answering the question. We need all of those things that you just mentioned and more.
Yes. And that's the thing. And you know, Corinne, when you both mentioned the Black flight, we do have to get to a point of, and you know, that just reminds me of how we talk about safety in all of the things that we do, and in policy, how they politically frame these things to dismantle our communities, because they say, you know, they're going to come in your suburban communities and this is what's going to happen. And so we always find ourselves in this struggle. But again, if we're going to have a Build Back Better framework, or if we're going to build back better, or if, you know, just to build, period, we have to build with everyone. And that does mean, as I said earlier, that is lowering prescription drug prices now. That is closing, you know, the healthcare gap, you know, with the Affordable Care Act. That is ensuring that, you know, Medicare can negotiate the prices for prescription drugs to be reasonably cost factored. It is about making sure that caregivers have what they need, and our children get a good sound education, to have the same books and the same opportunities, and to be able to go to the hospital without having surprise medical bills, and without having to pay these excessive copays, or just not having insurance because you cannot, you know. So all of these things that we see, what I'm saying in unison with the two of you, in order for us to build back better and to have a great human infrastructure, we need all of what you mentioned, and in your words, Pastor Heller, and more. I'd like to, before we wrap up, if there's, you know, present an opportunity for any of our participants, if they have any questions, if you have any comments, either for Pastor Heller or Pastor Corrine, to learn more about what they're doing, or even if you have a question or comment about me or the listening session, the floor is open now. There is a Q&A button at the bottom if you want to put, you know, something there, or if you just want to raise your hand. We have persons in the background, our text support, who can bring you up. Okay. I don't see anything in the Q&A, so I'm going to say that you all did wonderfully. I don't see any raised hands.
Praise the Lord.
I think, you know, you said it all and then some. So I want to thank you again. There is one question in the chat. My apologies. Thank you. So Winston Daniel, I can answer. It says, what is this organization doing to understand the Black Appalachian experience? Because so far, all I've heard was about Warren, Ohio. Mr. Daniel, Warren, Ohio is a part of Appalachia. Somehow or another, they've made Warren, Ohio, even Youngstown, a part of the Black Appalachian region. And so when we look at this as a whole, what Warren experiences along the Ohio River Valley is one of the things that helps to bring Black Appalachian voices, or to begin to confront the issues in Appalachia. And again, you know, Warren is considered along the Appalachian lines. I know a lot of people don't know that. Not sure how long ago it happened, but if there is other Black Appalachian voices that need to be heard, you know, by all means, welcome the opportunity to hear other voices. This space is for all voices, not just some voices. And the reason why you heard more about Warren, Ohio is because I do ask for people to speak from the place of where they are. But what has been mentioned is universal. This is a universal situation. And so, you know, these are things along the Black Appalachian region that we can continue to connect the voices and build the voices and the conversation. And I definitely, again, welcome if there are other stories and voices that need to be heard. This is just not a space for just one particular set of people, or well, it is for Black people, so let me take that back, but not just particular cities within Ohio. But because our speakers were from Warren, I felt it was necessary for them to just speak about the Black Appalachian experience in the region where they are. I hope that helped. If so, you know, you can put a thumbs up. If I need to go deeper, by all means, please ask the next question, and I'll make sure that I go deeper. Is there anything that you think you wanted to add, Pastor Heller? I know the Black Appalachian Coalition is something that I kind of lead.
I don't know, but I would think that a lot of what we spoke of that we're experiencing in Warren, because I listened to some of the other interviews that you did, the sessions that you did, and I saw a lot of common ground. There seemed to be some trends along the Black Appalachia region. And so I believe that a lot of what we're experiencing in Warren, Ohio, such as the loss of job opportunities, going from the steel industry to what they now refer to as the Rust Belt, healthcare issues, because the cancer rate, because of all the factories that were here, the cancer rate and other health issues are prevalent in this area. And the lack of what's being a food desert, things of that sort, where we've been located, even in the communities. Like I said, most of the time it's in flood zones and things of that sort. I think it's very common. And so the strategies to get Warren back on track would be would be the same strategies that other areas would need to use to get their communities back on track. So, and by the way, I just wanted to say, I never even, until I start listening to your sessions, I never even knew that there was this thing called Black Appalachia. And it's weird because guess where my mom is from? And I knew it all my life. She is from the hills of West Virginia. And they literally, and I've heard old people say a lot that I'll see you tomorrow if the river don't flood and the creek don't dry, something like that. Basically, if it rains and the creek floods, we ain't going nowhere, because all that water coming down those hills is going to cause a flood, and we ain't nobody going nowhere. My mom talked about instances like that. So, and then they migrated to this area. So we have some, to the person who made the comments, we have a lot in common. We just need to come together and realize we have a lot in common and work together for the betterment of everybody.
Correct. And again, you and Corinne are Black Appalachians. You live in an Appalachian region. So thank you for that question, Winston. And definitely there are other listening sessions that we have held with Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kentucky. In Ohio was the last, because all 4 states are along the Appalachian region or the Ohio River Valley. So again, thank you for such a profound question. And this is how we begin to help Black Appalachians by Black people who are in Appalachian regions to show up. So Pastor Heller and Corinne Williams, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank Orvi for providing technical and logistical support. I want to thank everyone who has attended, and I encourage you, if you want to learn more about the Black Appalachian Coalition, you can go to the to the landing page, which is Black Appalachian Coalition and .org and .com, and that will be put into the chat box. We do have social media, Facebook and Twitter. Please go to our Facebook and Twitter page and, follow us and like us and share. Also, we have YouTube. We have a Black Appalachian YouTube page where you will find this interview and the other 3 interviews. And Winston, I hope you go there and it'll help to answer your question even more deeply. And we ask you to go to the YouTube page and to subscribe us, to like us, to follow us. I want to also just invite you to some upcoming things that are happening. You can also find our events on the Black Appalachian Coalition website. On November the 11th, we're going to bring all of the voices back together. So that means that we'll be inviting Pastor Heller and Corrine to be at a table with the other 3 states. So we're hoping to bring back Akeisha from Kentucky and Cheryl, Crystal Good from West Virginia, Reverend Dr. Ronald English, Shayna Goggins, Melanie Mead from Clairton, PA, and Zabrian Smith from Aliquippa. And this event is called the story, the Black Appalachian Coalition, the story of us, where we're really bringing all of this together so everybody can see, just as you mentioned, Pastor Heller, that we have more in common than we do differences. Flood zones are not just in Warren. Flood zones are not just in Kentucky or West Virginia, or, they're all over. And people who are living in Black communities in the Black Appalachian region, they're carrying the brunt. And we need to just really realize and come to the table and build a strategy on how do we address this? How do we bring Black voices to the table? How do we begin to decolonize the narrative around rural and Appalachia so that people will not think that it's this monolithic place that's just rooted in whiteness? And you brought, another thing that comes to my mind is when you said that there are certain areas where it's 80% Black, but because of how things have been gerrymandered, the voices of the 80% of the Black people are not as strong as they could be because they've been gerrymandered out of their community. We will also be having a book talk with Dr. William Turner. We will put that announcement up. We are firming up the date, but he authored Black in Appalachia, and he has just released a new book on October 4th, I believe it's October the 1st, called Harlan Renaissance. And he's speaking to a lot of what was mentioned today. He's also going to be talking about, the coal factories, the steel mills, what it was like growing up in Kentucky, as a Black man, and what is it we need today, and why is it important for us to tell our stories? So if you want to learn more about Dr. Turner's book, we do have an announcement on our webpage. We are initially going to have that conversation, I believe, on October 18th, but we had to reschedule it. So we invite you to join us and to participate. If you have a story, we would love to hear your story. If you have a story, if you're Black and you live in Appalachia, we need your voice. So we are asking people to share their stories. There's a Google form that you can complete. We will reach out to you and set up an opportunity to speak with you with regarding your stories. And what happens is with the help of the Ohio River Valley Institute, we are taking those stories and we're building out a story map. Hopefully we'll be able to add some audio to it. Hint, hint, but your stories will show up. And so Pastor Heller and Corrine, your stories will show up on that story map. And I believe Ben will share everything with you once everything is updated. But again, this is about, Black voices being heard, confronting Black invisibility so that we can build a community, we can build a state, and we can build a country that is not dismissive of Black voices, but inclusive. Because in order for us to build back better on anything, we have to have all of us, not just some of us. And understanding that, I again invite you, share your story, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, like and subscribe to our YouTube page, have conversations, get into the fight. The only way that we win is if you join us. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Pastor Heller and Corinne once again. I want to thank again Ohio River Valley Institute for the technical support and the logistics, my assistant Brittany Robinson, who helps to put these things together. But more importantly, I want to thank all of you who took the time to participate and be a part of this conversation by listening in. And we wish you a wonderful, wonderful day. And we know tomorrow is Friday. Have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.